Johnson is here. Um, uh, and Ed Meehan is here. No, I'm
Faye is
sorry,
trying-
Frank Brown. Frank Brown.
That's okay.
Yeah.
My great grandfather
here.
was Frank Johnson, so that's
Yeah.
good. Faye is trying to sign in. I just talked to her.
Okay. Well, we'll get started with some preliminaries. I sent out a draft agenda, and then I followed it up pretty quickly. Thank you, Kim, for pointing out an error on the initial agenda. So have you all had an opportunity to review the draft agenda?
Yes.
Any revisions or corrections? Additions? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So move.
Motion
Frank, go ahead.
made, seconded by multiple people.
I will go down as a second.
Okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the proposed agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Good morning, Faye.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay, next, I sent out minutes from our January 14th meeting. We all had an opportunity to review them. Any proposed revisions or correction to the minutes of the meeting of January 14th? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the FAC meeting minutes from January 14th, 2021.
So moved.
Moved by Bob Burden, seconded by Jim Cardillo. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of the January 14th, 2021 meeting are approved. We'll go into reports now, and let's start with the audit committee. And I'm going to save finance department for the third report. Audit committee, anything of noteworthy to report, Jim?
Nothing worth noting. The committee is still filling one vacancy. I guess that's the only issue right now.
Okay. Any questions for Jim from his report?
Fred, if I could just
Pardon?
add for the audit committee that we have hired a consultant to help with the performance measures. So that's noteworthy. So that they're on board. We're going to talk about that on.
Thanks. Yeah, the next audit committee meeting is next week.
Yeah. So we've hired them, we're a contract, and they're going to start work next week.
Thank you.
On that effort.
Okay. Moving right on, and thank you for the audit committee report. I sent out with the agenda a monthly boards and commissions email from Hillary. This is something new, apparently, that she's going to be sending out once a month to all the boards and commission chairs, and I will forward it to you, giving information about things that are going on that board and commissions should know and possibly take action on from time to time. The one thing I do want to note on here is the requirement or the desire for members of the commission to take the Open Meetings Act training. This is available online. It's my recollection, and maybe I'm wrong, that last year several of the members of the commission took this Open Meetings Act training, or am I dreaming? Nobody is owning up to
I
it.
have not.
So no. So I'll assume that nobody from the commission has taken the Open Meetings Act training. Yes.
Hi, Fred. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning.
Just to note that the issue is that Hillary really wants the commission members to take it, as many as possible, because if there's ever an instance where someone on or in the meeting has not had the training, or no one in the meeting has had the training, then we're in violation of the law.
Right. Thank you very much for that clarification. Now I know I've had training. I've been involved in Open Meetings Act issues for many, many years in my capacity as city and town attorney for numerous cities and towns. But I think it would be good for one or two or three other members of the commission to take this training online. It is, if I recall, it's about 2 hours, I think. Mike, do you happen to know, is that about the length of it? Or if you don't know, I know it's not a lengthy undertaking.
It's less. It's less than
but-
that, and you have a little exam, little test.
And then I think you get a certificate when you pass the exam.
Yep.
Yeah. This sounds very familiar, so maybe I was talking to some other group about taking the training. So let me open it up to commission members. Is there anybody, any of the commission members who are willing to, invest a little bit of time and take this training?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, Frank and
Right.
Jim and Bob. All right. So let me just I'm just trying to see on the memo from Hillary whether the link. Yeah, there is a link.
Yeah, there's
to
a
the
link.
open there is a link. So I would encourage all of you who want to participate in this training to click on that link sometime before our next meeting. Take the training and then report back. Print out your certificate after you got 100% A+ on your exams, and then we'll all be qualified in case we do have to have some closed meeting. My recollection in all the years I've been doing this, we have had one closed meeting about 4 or 5 years ago. Generally, what we do is not really closed meeting worthy, but we'll be prepared if we need to do it. Any questions about that? Any questions about Hillary's memo generally? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Let's go to the finance department now, and Jody, and I've identified 3 things that I'd like to see you cover. And if you have more, that's great as well. But these were 3 that came to mind in the next couple of minutes. So
Okay.
why don't we start with general operations?
Yeah, so in the realm of general operations, I have a candidate that we're doing a second interview with for the deputy spot, and I'm hoping this is going to work out. The interview is with some of my direct reports tomorrow, and I'm hoping this works out. I'm hoping I can have somebody in place soon to help out. And operations wise, it's just getting challenging because of everything going on at once, budget and the trying to wrap up the financial statements and get them out the door and work on the FY22 budget. We've also had some challenges in the billing and collection side. As you know, there's problems with the mail system with getting utility bills to people and getting payments back to us. It kind of comes and goes. There's been times when we've had several weeks of delivery time, and then others when it's right on time. So it's kind of hard to judge. So they've been juggling, working with citizens as far as their utility bills are concerned. And we've started a system of delaying the posting of the fees, so to give the mail a little more time to get in, the posting of penalties for late payment. We're trying to accommodate that, but I can't always take responsibility for what the U.S. mail is doing, and we're encouraging people to pay online. Other than that, we moved our payroll to ADP just at the tail end of the payroll process. They were sending out the checks. But we're having some issues with that service too, so we may have to change what we're doing there. And refigure where we're going to get our payroll assistance from. That's it for general operations, unless you have any questions or want.
Anybody have any questions for Jody about general operations of the finance department? Hearing none, thank you. Move on, Jody, you can go to the next topic. Updated revenue projections and expenditure reductions, if any.
Well, I managed to get the general fund done for the FY 21 year, and I sent it to you in an email 5 minutes ago. So I don't know if you want to talk about that now or give people a chance to open it up. I can comment on it in general. The revenues, just focusing on 21, because as of now, we're pulling the 22 number together. So I probably won't put any FY 22 projections out there until we submit the mayor's proposed budget, which is just a few weeks away. So when you're looking at the 21, the revenues hadn't changed much since the last time that I did projections. They're slightly better. I think in my November revenues summary, I had 79,500,000. And that number is now increased to 80 million, 66, so about $500,000. That's a couple things. One, the income tax is coming in a lot better than I had projected. We thought we'd see a drop off here, but so far the pandemic has not impacted income taxes for us. The flow continues, and I think we're going to be flat with last year. And then we had some other things that I lowered the estimates on based on the activities. All right, and the expenses, we've definitely had some help on the expense side. As we're preparing for budget, I go through and do projections, detailed expense projections, line item by line item. And we see that the departments are being very effective and controlling their expenses. So in November, when I did this, the departmental expenses were about 82,869,000. And now they're 80,052,000. So we're down 2 million from where we were projecting before. Now, remember that in November, I hadn't done a lot to change the expense projections from the original budget because we didn't have enough months to see how the departments were trending. But now, since we've been through the accounts in detail, we can see that we've been effective in controlling the expenses, really pretty much across departments with very few exceptions. And it's happening a lot in the salaries. We are maintaining vacancies for a little longer than we had planned. So we're trying to squeeze some more turnover out of the budget. And we are having some savings on the benefit side, where our benefits cost for our medical premiums will be lower than we had anticipated for a couple reasons. One is that our FY20 financial statements are showing that we have fund balance in the health insurance fund that exceeds the 10% limit. So we're going to have a premium holiday for employees, and some of that comes back to the general fund and the participating funds. So that's saving us some across the board. And in addition, last year when we set the budget, when we drafted the budget, our medical premiums were set at flat from the year before, but we made some changes to the components of the healthcare plans and were able to get some more savings. And we ended up lowering overall premiums on July 1. So that in turn lowered our costs. So those two components on the medical and dental benefits are helping us out tremendously. And a lot of the savings is on the prescription side. We've got a new prescription benefit manager who is really helping us find savings and additional rebates, those kind of things. So I don't know if you want to talk about departments in specifically, if you have any questions about what I sent. When we look at the fund balance, one of the documents that I sent you was the fund balance roll forward. That changed slightly. we're gonna, we have $3 or $4 million of additional savings. You can see that we're going to have fund balance that exceeds, if you look at the bottom of the FY, that second table there on the bottom, the FY 2021 fund balance using the FY 22 revenues as a guide, we're going to have $3.7 million over what we are required to have. Now that gets distributed into the reserves. If I don't think we're going to have to tap the budget stabilization fund like we planned to this year. And then so that if we end up with the $3.7 million, we will be splitting it between the capital reserve and the reserve for one-time uses. So the trick then in our budgeting is that FY22 columns where you see the 22 projected revenue and the 22 projected expenses. Those two numbers on the top line in the general fund there, the 81,966,000 and the 81,966,000 and the 89,046,000. Those two amounts should be equal, at least equal. And that is the challenge for next year. It's still about $7 million. And we're now working on that as far as our 22 budget. We have been.
Jody, which numbers are you talking about? I'm losing you.
So this roll forward of fund balance takes the fund balance and rolls it forward through the years. And when I updated those 21 projections, the 21 projected revenue and the 21 projected expenses. And I believe we're going to have fund balance in excess of what our base is of $3.7 million. That's calculated in the bottom table. We are required to keep a 15% reserve, 15% of the revenues of the general fund, the parking fund, and the transportation fund. And that's going to be a $14.2 million requirement, and we're going to be above that by $3.7 million. So when you roll into 22, then we still have a challenge in 22 to make the reoccurring expenses equal to the recurring revenues. And as you see there right now, the reoccurring revenues are projected at $81.9 million. But if we move forward and honor all commitments, we were projecting 89 million. I say we're because we haven't pulled all of our budget numbers together for 22 yet. Those amounts are what we're working on right now. We're going to lock in on those. And we have been working with all of our employee groups to talk about actions for next year. And we're moving forward well with them and making plans. However, they've just passed this federal law. And we understand, and I don't know, David, if you want to chime in here and talk about what we know, what we believe we're getting in help and assistance from that law, and we can use it for revenue replacement. So this will help.
Yeah. So as you all know, the American Rescue Plan was passed yesterday. That's the big follow-on COVID relief bill that the president's going to sign on Friday. That bill contains funding for state and local governments. And our share of it, and we got a message from Senator Van Hollen's office yesterday that breaks out the amount that each county and each city in Maryland is going to get, and we're going to get $6.64 million from that bill. So that's meant to be revenue replacement funding. So that's how we intend to use it, or at least to recommend to the city council to use it that way, is as revenue replacement. The county's getting, Anne Arundel County is getting about $113 million of ARP funding. So they're getting a healthy chunk of money as well.
So that funding will go a long way to help us in 22, although we may end up having to take other action to try to trim expenses and to possibly use some of the reserves. We haven't put together our whole strategy for 22 yet. And I wanted to comment, I don't have updated projections, parking and transportation. I did the parking fund. I haven't really nailed down the expenses yet, so I didn't want to bring that, but I do believe that that fund could end up short this year. Maybe $700,000, $750,000. And that also is a revenue issue in that the garages were offering discounted and free parking rates during certain times so that we could encourage shoppers to come downtown and use the stores all through this. I think they went into effect in the summer and we kept them in effect through December. So that helped the businesses, I'm sure. But the parking fund we're going to have to figure out something to do for the parking fund to close that gap. The transportation activities, we don't have finished FY21 projected expenses yet. We had a big CARES funding there of $4.3 million, but the Maryland Department of Transportation and the federal government have not released the entire amount for us to apply. They've offered us half of it so far, and we're waiting to hear if we can use another 1.2 million of it in FY21 to close the gap in the transportation fund. And we've asked them for that usage, and we're still waiting to hear from the federal government. So I'm hoping that funding comes through. I understand that when we had the second round of funding from the federal government that passed, I think it was in December, there were more transportation monies in that one, but we didn't get a big piece of that. We might get a small amount. They've estimated we might get $80,000, but we don't even know about that. So we may not get any extra transportation funding from that one. And so far, we don't know if we're getting any transportation monies for this last one that passed.
Jody, put on your look at your crystal ball, put on your sorcerer's hat or whatever. Sitting here in your seat today, is there anything you see on the horizon between now and the end of this fiscal year that could materially alter, the projections that you've made? Or are you feel reasonably confident, knowing what we know today and what we can reasonably foresee, that that's where we're going to be at the end of the year?
So I feel very confident about the tax monies, and that's real property, personal property, and the income taxes. Those I'm fairly confident with the projections. The other ones, I'm just using what we've seen throughout the year, the trends that are, like admissions tax. We're still getting admissions taxes. I don't know exactly what events they're related to. Some entertainment venues like theaters, I don't know if they're open. They don't have a lot of capacity. So, but there are events that are bringing in admissions taxes, and those are the kind of things I don't know what's backing them up. And, but based on the trends, this is what I project. I mean, we're not too far away from year end, and I'll keep an eye on those. But I would say I'm very confident with the big tax items. These other components, hotel, motels, pretty steady. We're at, there are people still coming to town. It's not as large as it used to be, but I'm trying to be conservative in the estimates I've given you as far as where we anticipate revenues to be.
Thank you, Jody. Questions of Jody?
Yeah, Fred, Bob Burton.
Yes, Bob.
Say, Jody, taking a look at 22's forecast that you presented, where you have the delta of the $7 million gap of expenses over revenue, it would still appear that we have a systemic challenge there. I mean, relying on the ARP to try to make up the difference, that's just a one-time infusion of funds coming into the city. That's not going to be there year after year.
Right.
What's the possibility of, looking at the 2022 budget process and trying to address that systemic problem, even though that 6.64 million is there from the ARP, nonetheless, this is an opportunity, I would think, for us to, take this challenge on and try to, set a course for not only 22, but for outlying year budgets to try to, address this continuing systemic problem that we have when we look at each budget year, that we're always, it appears, challenged to try to get revenue up to what the expense projection is going to be, or trying to get the expense projection down.
So the problem with what we're having is the adequacy of revenues. And I will say up through 19, it was fine. The challenge was if you look at revenues overall, 19 to 20 to 21, you're going to see it flatten right out. And that's mostly because of the pandemic. If the economy would have continued to grow in the way it was growing, we might have seen revenues equal the expense projections. However, it's not happened. And if we have, for instance, 83 million of 20 revenue and 80 million of 21 revenue, and then we have to, and now we look at 22, and let's say it is 82 million, you're still climbing slowly. You leveled that out from year to year, but your expenses were still climbing. So if we move forward and we use the funding from the federal bill, I can't remember what it's called. They give it an acronym every time, but this most recent one is going to give us the 6.6, but that doesn't close the whole gap, one. And then I don't know if we'll choose to use some of that for parking, or if we'll try to do something else for parking. So that's not going to close the whole gap. So we may have to look to some expense trimming measures in 22 anyway, despite that big chunk of funding. And then to the other point, that is a one-time chunk of funding. And if we can find ways to close the gap in 22, then FY23 is going to be a challenge, because the structural deficit that we're trying to fill is still there. We still will have that delta next year between revenues and expenses. And I do hope, though, when we go from 22 into 23, those revenues will start to recover. So it's not going to continue to grow, and we may even close that difference, that annual difference. But 23 is going to be the challenge. And the council is going to have to decide, as we renegotiate our employment agreements this time next year, and as the council considers the taxes, the tax rate, they're going to have to decide what they want to do there, whether or not we're going to significantly trim back on expenses or try to find revenue sources.
Thank you.
Jim,
Thanks. With regards to the ARP funds, are there any restrictions or spending requirements attached to it? Do you know, David?
We haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
I do know, well, and David's going to chime in. He may know more about the details of the bill. Go ahead.
Yeah, the big restriction is that we have until December 31st of 2024 to spend the money. So that's the only restriction that I know of. Is we basically have, almost 4 years to spend the money. But otherwise, I think it's meant to be revenue replacement, but I think it can be used for whatever a city or county normally spends money for.
Okay. Because one of my thoughts was to either address unfunded liabilities or deferred maintenance. And I was wondering, because it's kind of a one-time windfall, how much of it is really needed for operating budget relief and how much could be used to address deferred maintenance or place in the capital projects? I mean, if we could use it for capital projects, think of how it lowers your cost of borrowing if it's a zero interest and those in a zero repayment loan.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jim, because I think a lot of cities and states and counties have budget surpluses already. And so they're going to have the flexibility to use it for those purposes, which is really great for, for whatever that governmental organization is. I'm not sure we have that type because we have the deficit that's projected. I'm not sure we're going to have
Right,
that.
yeah, but I'm just not sure we need all 6.6 to roll to an operating surplus is my thought.
Right.
So my concern is I'm not so concerned about the borrowing costs. Right now, we're borrowing at very low rates and the
Yeah.
capital projects are slow moving. And a lot of our debt is paid for by the enterprise funds. But we have these capital reserve fund monies that you can see on my chart are projected to be $3.9 million at the end of this year. And if 21 ends with my projected surplus, that will get another $1.8 million of funding. So there's money there that if we want to put some cash towards some deferred maintenance on the capital side, we could use that funding as well and not use debt to do
Okay,
it.
so I guess my question was, the restrictions are very broad and you're considering all options for use of the windfall. Thank you.
Yeah, but for next year, we got $7 million delta between our revenues and expenses, and a significant piece of that money is going to have to help in that regard. Plus, we may have to take other measures as well.
Yeah, I know that Bob kind of shares my concern about using one-time fixes to plug structural deficits.
We're definitely, if we do that, we definitely push it to 23. Push all the hard decisions to 23, and that'll be on the council to decide how to approach that. That's going to be a real tough year.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jody, on that. Ross, did I see your hand up?
Yes. I wanted to pursue parking a little more because we may get this help with the ARP money, but then we're moving right into the Hillman Garage being down. Is the contract with the people that are doing that for us going to tide over the loss of revenue from the Hillman Garage, which of course then is revenue that helps transportation? Or are we going to get a double whammy? We'll be weaned of the ARP money in 23 and also still have a big parking problem.
Ross, our plan and our objective with the AMRP project is to preserve as much of the concession payment as we can, and maybe even convert it to annual payments instead of a one-time payment to help cover the cost of parking and the cost of transit, and to seek grants to make up for that money to pay for City Dock. There's a lot of grant funding that's going to be available. I mean, there's the Resilience Authority, which is always our plan, in getting that established to use funding from that to pay for City Dock. But there's also a lot of infrastructure money that's going to be available for resilience that we'll be able to tap into. So we're actively seeking grants, putting grant applications out so we can cover as much of the City Dock cost as possible, so we can use that AMRP money that you spoke of to help tide us over, not only for FY23, but for many future years to help pay for transit.
Okay, thank you. It's hard to look $6.7 million gift horse in the mouth, but it is lamentable that we're not having this crisis in the election year. Relying on the council to be responsible for fiscal 23 does not make me feel very comfortable.
Okay, Bob?
Two questions. Actually, Ross, I was going to ask you that question as chair of the finance committee. How you're going to tackle 23 while you're looking at 22, because I don't think that can be ignored. But before I get to that, Jody, one other question I have for you. What is your assessment of the city's cash flow now going to the end of this fiscal year?
Our cash flow is fine. I mean,
Okay.
because we've been able to trim our expenses to be in line with the revenues that were reduced unexpectedly a year ago, we've kept our expenses down too. And so we are in a strong cash flow position, just as strong as we were a year ago.
Okay, now, when we look out to 23 and the challenge that you noted there, what is the potential impact on the city's cash flow if we delay or do not take appropriate measures to try to address the challenge that appears to be in front of us for 23?
Whatever we do for 23, I'm hoping it will be a scenario where there are revenue sources that will cover expenses, whatever that is. Either we lower the expenses, we increase revenue, or we do both.
Right.
We cannot pass a budget that's not balanced, and we strive to keep the recurring revenues at least equal to recurring expenses. So as long as we stay within those parameters, we should have no cash flow problem. With cash flow, the problem is if somebody who's providing you revenues cannot pay you quickly. If we had a significant delay in the payment of property taxes, where people weren't paying and we had to wait till tax sale. If we had, if the utility side does not impact us, that really has not seen much of an impact. We've had some slow payments. We're keeping everybody on track. That's going smoothly, and we helped out a lot by our water relief bill program that we did with the original CARES funding. But the overall cash flow is strong. Like I said, I don't see that position changing at all unless if the council were to recommend the depletion of reserves and continue to use these one-time revenue sources to fill the structural deficit and then continue to build that. We're going to have an issue. The scenario you were suggesting is that we would continue to move forward with the budget where we're spending more than we're taking in. And I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Okay,
Very strongly
Ross?
so.
Ross?
I just wanted to return earlier, Jody, you characterized the problem as an adequacy of revenues. I think it is overspending myself, and the problem that the council is going to face, and I'm sure the administration is facing in their negotiations, 80% of our spending plus supplies and all the other things that go along with having staff are where the spending is. And we're finding, I believe, quite a bit of stickiness in slowing down that money. Adding to that, we have this huge tap for the police and fire pension plan, which is now going to be 33% of salaries. And I think that's going to continue to grow because we need to maintain our actuarially determined contribution. So I really think that this is an unfortunate Band-Aid and a big Band-Aid that we're getting in fiscal 22. I don't want to see us go bankrupt, but on the other hand, I really do feel it's going to make it very easy to sort of kick the can down the road. And I don't know how we address that. And you're putting it on the council, but I think it's the administration that is going to have to make the responsibility case to us. Most of the people on the council don't understand the details of these things. They don't understand the flows and the projections. And I think to some extent don't want to understand because it requires hard decisions. So I wouldn't just blandly say, gee, the council's going to have to figure something out. we're going to have to be led, because it's not going to come from me crying henny penny once again, the sky is falling. And the fact, I hope, will play a strong role in this as well. You've got to point to us the best you can, a responsible course for us to be taking as stewards of the city.
So I didn't mean to imply you would be the only one making the decision. The budget that comes to you next year for 23 will have to have the plan in place. But it is the council who includes the mayor to decide what the path is ultimately forward when you approve that budget. And I agree with you that even catching up on the revenue side and getting back to normal, it would be hard to maintain increases of cost of living increases of 3% a year, as well as step increases annually when you're eligible for a step increase of 5.35%. That has to be reviewed with our next round of negotiations. I don't know what the answer to that is and how that's going to play out when we talk to the unions, but that is that's a big part of the solution. The expenses are growing faster than the revenue base even over the last 4 years.
And I would just mention that so FY22 is the last year of the 4-year labor agreement. So to add to the complexity of FY23, we'll be negotiating a new labor agreement as well for FY23, and that's probably a good thing. We've reopened the current agreement for discussions this year, but it'll be a new start for FY23 with the new labor agreement with each of the 4 unions.
Okay, yes, Bob.
Yeah, David, are there preparations underway right now on the city's behalf to start preparing for those negotiations, being that you're going to be entering into them probably sometime in the next handful of months?
Yeah, right now we're focused on the negotiations with them for FY22, because as I said, we've reopened, even though we have labor agreements through FY22, we had to reopen those because of the projected deficit. So we're focused on that, but we certainly will start planning for FY23 after we get through this budget cycle for FY22.
Okay, let's shift to FY22 budget. I know staff has been working diligently on preparing a budget for the mayor to ultimately submit to the city council in the next month or so or sooner. So a couple of questions. Timetable, for this budget, where are we in the process? And at what point will the FAC be asked to weigh in on anything with respect to the budget, the tax rate, those things?
If you are, I'll answer the second question first. If you are only having the monthly meetings, it will be their next meeting that you will see debt affordability. You will see the proposed budget. We'll probably do a summary for you to talk about how it was built and what the changes are, and then talk about the debt affordability and how that fits into the capital program as well. So that'll be next time.
Okay, so
we can also use the May meeting as well, but your feedback to the council is probably better early on.
So let me just stop you for a second. I know each year we deal with our regular meeting, but then we reserve the right, and you often have conducted a special meeting as needed to continue budget review and budget discussions. So I think that the FAC members should contemplate that there may be a need for a special meeting sometime in the April-May timeframe. And we'll, see how that goes after April meeting. And Jody, I would say the more that you can get to us in advance for everybody to be able to read, digest, be able to formulate questions, et cetera, the more productive our time will be at the next meeting. So I know you'll do your best. I think we would really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to Yes, David.
Yeah, I was just going to mention the specific dates. So the budget gets introduced to the council on April 12th. And that's when the state of the city is as well. And then for the first time, we've changed the schedule a little bit. We're going to do a council work session that following Thursday, which is the 15th of April, to really sort of delve into detail in the budget book and sort of how the budget was built. So you all certainly would be welcome to join us at that meeting for that discussion.
Thank you, David. Let me just say to everybody that given the probable importance of the April meeting with vis-a-vis the budget and the information we'll be receiving, what may be a voluminous amount of information, we should anticipate that the meeting may last a little bit longer than usual. So yeah, we don't want to shortchange this. We try and keep our meeting to an hour, hour and a half each month, but this one may be longer, so you should plan accordingly. I see Katie has her hand up.
Yes, I just want to add, council passed a resolution to add to the dates that David mentioned. May 10th, the Finance Committee and Financial Advisory Commission submit comments to the City Council on the proposed budgets. That's the date as well.
Okay. So that means that we'll have our April meeting, and then we, if we're supposed to submit comments by May 10th, then the May meeting may not be sufficient time to finish budget review, discussion, formulation of opinions, et cetera, et cetera. So we should probably think about a special meeting, sometime after the April meeting. Okay. Yes, Jody.
I wanted to ask about your April meeting. I don't know what date it is. If it's before the 12th, I would definitely not want it to be before the 12th. We're going to be really busy, and that will be a very critical hour, 2 hours to spend. So I'm not sure if it's that week, the 14th or 15th, or when we've got it scheduled for. But if it's right before budget, you're not going to have a lot to look at, and we'll be pretty busy.
We talk about our May meeting.
No, April.
April is April 8th.
So that is like the Thursday before we're presenting the budget to the council. So if we meet, we won't have a lot of information because the budget won't be public yet. So, I don't know. And Katie and I will be super, super busy, although an hour is not that much time as long as it's a quick meeting. So I don't know how, David, you took your mute off. I don't know if you want to input to the timing of this next meeting.
Yeah, I would just suggest that if it works for you all, since we have the work session on the 15th, which might be beneficial if you all are able to join that. That's 3 to 5 in the afternoon on that Thursday. But then if we could push it back to the 22nd, then the FAC meeting, then we would have the opportunity to have a meaningful discussion of the budget at this meeting. So that would be April 22nd.
In the meantime, we could have a short meeting on your regular meeting time. We would be able to talk about debt affordability at that time, but we'll probably also be covering debt affordability at the work session. So it may be.
Why don't we plan for our regular meeting on the 8th, understanding that there will be the work session, and then maybe we ought to plan a special meeting for April 22nd.
Okay. And I will send you debt affordability as soon as I have it. So we may be able to cover that at the next meeting, but the budget won't be public.
Bob, did I see your hand up?
Yes, Fred, I was just going to ask, is there a possibility, or would it make sense to try to do a joint meeting of the Finance Committee and the FACT, or their work session, so to speak, so you can get us all in the room at the same time, and that perhaps may save some time and multiple meetings for the staff?
And I think that that's the idea of having everybody at the work session. It'll
Okay.
probably be a 2-hour work session, and we'll be doing a presentation on what's in the budget, debt affordability, all those components. So it'll be a good.
Is this
um,
a finance committee work session or a city council work session?
It's a
City
council
council.
works.
The full council.
Well, let me throw it open to all of you. Yes, Ross.
So the Finance Committee has proposed that we have meetings of the council as a whole, or at least all who can attend, rather than having the Finance Committee go off in its corner for a month and work hard. I'm going to be talking about that at our next Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday. I'm not sure how that's all going to work out, but we don't give the council very much time to think about things if they wait to look at things till the 10th of May, and then they have essentially 3 weeks to do all of their work. So I need to speak with David and Jody about how we're going to plan those meetings of the whole. But I think that we have to find a way to be much more efficient and effective on how we do our council deliberations. We just don't have enough time for everybody to be brought up to speed, and it's really tough when the Finance Committee makes its report and then we get all of the same questions asked by various members of the council. So we take a lot of time to bring everybody up to speed when I believe we should be bringing them up to speed all along. But that's something to keep in mind. And those meetings are recorded. So when you have leisure time and nothing better to do, if you can't come, you can still see what we talk about.
Well, let me ask this, I'm not sure it would be appropriate, and others can weigh in, to have a joint city council fact meeting, but I certainly think that, saying that the work session on the 15th should be an attendance issue for as many of the fact members as possible. And I would encourage that. I'm going to put it on my calendar. And then we have our regular meeting on the 8th, and maybe that'll be a shorter meeting than usual, but I don't want to lose the momentum. And then let's just tentatively put on our calendars a special meeting for the April 22nd, in case we probably will need it. So let's plan for a special meeting on April 22nd to kind of talk about, digest what we heard at the work session and get follow-up information. Yes, Bob?
What's the date of the work session again? April 15th?
Tax day, yes, April 15th.
Can the fact be on the distribution list for that meeting so that we have the opportunity, if we wish to attend, we can?
Yeah, we'll add you all, and we can keep you in the background. Like you were for so long last meeting, Bob. But then if we choose to bring you forward, or if the council wants to seek advice from you all or whatever, we could bring you forward. So we'll make sure that you're included in those invites.
Fred, just one thought to share. I think that at times when we've had a joint meeting with the fact included, either with the city council in a work session or with the finance committee, the dialogue that occurs between the fact members and the city council members, I would like to think is helpful. Often the fact is, we're a commission that, meets separately and we sit off to the side, and most of our communications with our city council members is via written communication, with the exception of a few presentations that we've given from time to time. Having the opportunity, though, to promote a dialogue between the individual fact members and city council members, either in a joint meeting with the finance committee or with the city council from time to time in their work sessions, might add another dimension as the city council members work to get their arms around or their hands around some of the more challenging issues when it comes to budgeting and financial priorities of the city and so forth. So just a thought to share.
Well, I think, David, didn't you say that, the FAC members can be, given the opportunity to attend and potentially participate in that work session?
I mean, I'd certainly like to hear Ross's thoughts about that, but I think it'd be a great idea.
I would like them to participate. I was making a mental note that I was going to ask for the fact to be brought forward at that meeting. I think them not participating would be a lost opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just leave it at that. Bob, I don't necessarily like the idea personally of having a joint city council meeting with the FAC city council. You have a FAC meeting, making it essentially a FAC meeting as well. Because we are subservient to the city council, and I think they should have the primacy, but I think we should be there to hear, to observe, to ask questions, and to act as a resource and potentially engage in conversations with the council. And I think it can be done. So thanks for that suggestion. Okay, anything further on? Yes, Jody.
I wanted to add that Katie is working with OpenGov to get the budget book on the OpenGov product. And it's going to, based on what we have, we think it's going to work. I mean, it looks good. It works well. It's going to look a little different, but we're putting all the same information in. It's just the font, the colors, those kind of things are a little bit different looking. To add to that, and provided everything gets done, you will be able, if you have an electronic version of the report, you will have the ability to click on items and see what's in the background. So it's gonna add some features. It's going to look a little different, but like I said, the content is going to be virtually the same as how we did it last year. Just we're trying to use this OpenGov online product that that Katie and OpenGov premium support is developing for us.
Thank you, Jody.
And we hope we're going to get some samples out to the finance committee to see what it looks like, to make sure they can follow it and understand what's in there and what it looks like.
All right, so any other questions about the FY22 budget process? No? Okay. Let me just make a note. And what was the date by which the city council wants feedback from the FAC? May 10th?
May 10th.
Okay.
So May 10th is when we have to make our report. So if your information is going to be in that report, we'll need it before May 10th.
Oh, I'm sorry. My understanding was May 10th was comments were due to the council. I apologize.
Yeah, that's
No.
what I thought, that the FAC comments to the council were due on May 10th.
The council, the finance committee is responsible for reporting to the council on May 10th, its findings. So if it's in the report like we do every year, in fact, is going to be part of that, we would need that in time to get it in the report. I would say May 8th at the very latest.
I thought the FAC comments ran parallel and independent with the finance committee. Is that the correct recollection, or is that not right? That both finance committee and FAC report to council on parallel tracks, or is that wrong? I mean, we'll have to look at the language, but anyways, that's the way I recalled it. That could be wrong.
We show them in the budget book separately as well.
Okay.
Bob?
Yeah, well, my understanding all along, and Fred, you and I were there at the beginning of this, is that the FAC serves as an advisory commission to both the city council and the administration. So I would assume that that advisory capacity not only exists for the entire city council as a whole, but also to any various committees that are composed within the city council, such as finance committee, to serve in an advisory capacity to them if they feel that that's appropriate and is needed as they formulate their recommendations to the broader city council. So I always interpreted our advisory capacity to be rather broad in that sense, rather than working on parallel or separate tracks from, say, the city finance committee. I think that we can be as, we could offer, assistance to the city finance committee directly as they're preparing their recommendations, as well as, providing our overall recommendations to the city council.
I'm not objecting to that, Bob. I'm just trying to clarify for all of us what is due to who by when. And again, I thought that, and because I made a note here, and maybe I was misunderstanding, that we would owe a report to the mayor and council directly to the mayor and council by May 10th. That doesn't mean that we also can't, as we have in the past, I think, not every year, but some years, provide, I'll get to you in a minute, Mike, given guidance or advice or respond to questions from the finance committee, city council finance committee. Mike, Mr. City Attorney, you have your hand up?
Yeah, my review of the code, you are an independent body. You can present whatever you want to present to whomever you want to present, whenever you want to present it. You should not feel constrained or constricted to provide a report to anybody in their time frame. You can provide it in your time frame as long as you think it's helpful to provide it within those time frames and those structures. You are not reporting to any particular body in a formal way unless you decide that it's appropriate to do so. You can do that, of course, in council and league with, all the different bodies that the city has, but the code only provides that you are advising the mayor, then the alder persons, but it does not designate or dictate that you are providing advice to any particular group at any particular time. So it's really on the commission to decide how they want to present their information, their advice, and their reports. And because you have that level of independence, there is no flow through. And I think that's appropriate. There's no flow through, there's no restriction on how your information gets to the eventual decision makers, which is the mayor and the alder persons all together.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that clarification, explanation. I appreciate it. I hope that was helpful for all the commission members. But if somebody is asking for our help, I think it's only appropriate we try and provide that help within the time constraint that they think it will be appropriate and desirable for them to receive our information. So, but I do understand what you said. Okay, if there's nothing further on the FY22 budget process, let's move on. David, is there anything new for you to report on the State Resiliency Authority legislation?
So it's been in the county attorney's office being drafted, the legislation. It appears that they have a draft prepared because they've requested a meeting with us to review that with Mike Lyles and I. So there's finally a little bit of forward movement on that. The plan would be for us to, both the city and the county, to review and provide comments on the draft legislation, get a final piece of legislation that would be introduced to the county, let them go through the process. Hopefully they would pass it, and then it would come over to the city to pass. If the county doesn't pass, then that changes the whole ballgame, of course. So we want to see if they pass it first, and then we'll bring it to the city to submit to the city council.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Any idea about timing?
I think they want to move on it fairly quickly, is the impression that I got from the emails trying to set up the meeting to start the review process. So I think it will be introduced. And this is speculation somewhat, but I would hope that it would be introduced in April with the county council.
Okay. All right. Any questions from members of the FAC? Nope. All right. Thank you. Bob, can you just report to the group on your discussion or report to the city council on the spending affordability process that we had talked about?
Yes, we we gave a presentation. The FAC gave a presentation at the work session for the city council, which was a follow through to the letter that we sent to them. We, as our communication between you and I, Fred, in preparation for this meeting, we were looking for a referral back from the city council before we take our next steps. And so that is where we sit right now, in a waiting mode to get that written referral back for us to, move forward in gathering the additional information necessary so that we can make an appropriate recommendation back to the city council and the administration.
Okay. Can I ask Ross and David to see what we can get from the city council in terms of some sort of referral back in response to the presentation, so that we have direct marching orders from city council saying, yes, we like the idea and please proceed forward, so that we're not just going out there and undertaking a process without the blessing of the mayor and council members. So let's see.
Go ahead, Ross.
I'm shocked. I thought we had given the go ahead. I didn't realize you were waiting for some kind of written referral. I'm not even sure, and I'd turn to Mr. Lyles, how the council would do that. I would think that might be something that needs to be drafted by the Office of Law and issued by the city manager to the fact. But if it's something you need drafted that has the only thing the council ever signs that I know of is council citations. So if you want a council citation telling you to go ahead and do this.
Well, no, I don't think, Russ, I don't think we need anything that formal, but the fact gets referrals on legislation, several times a year. And I think we're just looking for some kind of referral back, whether it's on that form or, some other form or a brief memo or something. The city council heard and, appreciates the presentation you made regarding spending affordability. Please proceed forward with conducting further analysis and report back to us with your findings. Something like that.
I will most assuredly work with the city manager and the city attorney and get that to you forthwith.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then once we have it, we can talk about our next steps, in moving it forward. Any questions? Any further questions on that? No. After the last meeting, Ed Meehan wrote to me and asked if we could have from staff some sort of presentation about pension and retirement benefits, to see where, so we understand exactly what the city is providing to its various employee groups and how that compares with what is being done, elsewhere. And David, you responded back to me saying, not no, but now may not be the appropriate time given the fact that you're in labor negotiations. So is that a fair summary of what you've responded back to me?
Yeah, we can certainly provide an update on where we are right now, but as far as looking forward towards potential changes, we would prefer to hold off on those discussions for right now until we get through this budget cycle.
Yeah, but Ed, were you looking for us to get more of a status as to where we are and where we are in providing pensions and benefits to our employees and how that may compare with others? Or were you looking to discuss at the same time changes to what's being provided now?
Well, my thought is done in steps, but it's pretty clear from looking at the budget and participating in our discussions, including references to today, that pensions and other retirement related are a significant and growing expense for the city. So my thought would be that our commission might be helpful in terms of getting an understanding of the status today. How do we to similarly sized jurisdiction is that type of information available? Get some baseline understanding. Do we think are on par with what other municipalities are doing? That we are more generous or less generous? I realize that that is the type of thing that also folds into negotiations. I presume that in our negotiations, we try to make clear to the unions what is feasible. But I think it would be very important when it can be done, that we understand where we are today and how we think we compare to other, that the and retirement benefits is a very critical area for city to be examining as to what is possible and realistic going forward. So I'll take the information, I guess, in whatever time it can be provided. We don't burdens unnecessarily, but I do think it's an area we really should begin to take on.
Okay, Jody?
Yeah, well, why don't I talk to our actuary who does our work for our police and fire pension and see if they have ideas how we might get something like that pulled together, especially the part about doing a survey of all the local counties and municipalities that might be comparable to ours and see what they have and see if that's a lot of work and have them do that. That might be a good precursor to what we're going to have to do a year from now with the union negotiations and deciding if we're going to do anything different with pension going forward.
Okay, that would be greatly appreciated, Jody. And would they, Ed, when you were talking about benefits as well, were you talking about things like health insurance and life insurance and all those types of benefits? Or were you talking mostly retirement plans?
Well, I was actually thinking including the health benefits, the relative sharing of the burden there. So it's a big area of expense. Appropriate for us to take a careful look at it and see what, if any, suggestions we might be able to offer.
So
Okay.
we have a healthcare insurance company that we work with. I'll call them consultants that help us find savings in our healthcare costs. And that would be a good body to go to for something like this. I think they're doing a tremendous job because, as you know, over the past few years, we have not had to increase our premiums. We have been saving in our health insurance costs every year, and they continue to find things for us to do to the structure of the plan to help us out. So, but we do work with another organization that we can talk to provide something like that as well on the health insurance side.
Okay, great, Jody. So if you could, take the lead for staff on, seeing what's available, what might be available, whether it's feasible to get this information and within what time frame, greatly appreciate it. And if you have any questions, I'd ask you to link up directly with Ed and make sure you're going in the right direction if you have any questions. Okay. And I realize that we're coming into a very intense time for you all with the budget and everything. So Ed, can we just ask Jody not put any time constraints on her, but when reasonably feasible, given all the other work and budget work she has to do?
If I do this, I'm farming it out.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, if we can do this.
Sorry, go ahead, Jody.
All right, so if we do this, it will be something that I have these consultants pull together. And what I don't know is how much will charge us to do it. So that's one of the components. So that's what I have to check into.
Yeah. Okay, Bob.
Hey, Jody, what is the schedule for the CAFR?
We're going to have that out by the end of this month. It was supposed to be done, well, originally in December. Then we pushed it to February because of all the CARES work that was, and the pandemic budgetary work that was piling up on my desk. And now we've delayed it to March 31st, and we've got extensions from both the state and the GFOA. And we're finishing up. I've got a good draft. I just have to have time to look at it, and we're wrapping up the fine points.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on Faye? I see your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to offer, Jody, you may not need to reinvent the wheel. As you know, every 4 year, the Compensation Commission, we just concluded, and some of that information was assembled for that. So I just wanted to share that from your staff, and I'll tell you who provided that information via email, okay? But it was not as extensive, maybe as what you're looking for, Ed, but we did get compensation from other comparable jurisdictions, so we could make a reasonable recommendation. I just wanted to offer you that, Jody, okay?
Great.
Thank you very much, Faye. Appreciate it. Anything else on that matter? Okay, that concludes the agenda. What I'd like to do is just summarize where I think we are in terms of meetings and work sessions and all that stuff. Our next regular meeting is April 8th. City Council work session, April 15th at 3 o'clock. Potential special meeting, likely special meeting of the FAC, April 22nd. Our report to the City Council is due on May 10th. We talk about report to Finance Committee if we want to do a separate one. And I think Ross said he would need it by May 8th, so we could incorporate it into the Finance Committee's report to the council. And then our May meeting is May 13th. Everybody have that? Did I misstate anything or misspeak? No? Okay. Yeah. Yes. Jim, do I see your hand up?
There was me and at least one other person who said that they would complete Open Meetings Act training between now and the next meeting.
Right. That was you and Bob Burden.
Bob, okay.
And I don't remember Ed Meehan.
And Ed, okay.
And Frank Brown. And Frank Brown.
Okay, good, thanks.
So all four of you said that you would take the Open Meetings Act training. So look forward to brief report on that at the next meeting.
Very
and David or Jody or anybody, do you know, are they supposed to turn in their certificate to anybody at City Hall or just keep them on file in their own records? Or Michael, if you know.
Yeah, I don't know if Mike knows. I don't know what they do with those. Ashley
keep
will
them on
know.
file.
I believe they go to Hillary. I'm not sure, but I might.
They could, if you keep them on file. If we need them, we'll get them. Just
Okay.
hold on to them. Just hold on to them.
Very well.
Because it's really it's did you do it kind of proof thing, right? So there's nowhere that it goes. If somebody asks, we just ask you to produce it. Right?
Very
so
good.
If you hold on to it for right now, that'll be sufficient.
Good. Hey, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that information. All right. Anybody else have anything for the good of the order today? Or for the good of the city? Or for good of city finances? Other than staying health and safety moving forward. Hearing none, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
Bob Burns, second. Jim Cardillo. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.